at liftoff, according to the United States and South Korean authorities. A couple hours prior to that, we watched as missiles were paraded by the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Pyongyang, including a medium-range solid fuel missile, which could have been the type that was at the launch site on the east coast of the country today. If successful, it could have threatened a U.S. ally, Japan, as well as 35,000 U.S. service members in that country. While a missile launch or a nuke test was expected around this time to mark that anniversary, there is new speculation that it was time for the trip of Vice President Pence to the region. He arrived at an air base in South Korea a few hours after the launch today.
North Korea's rocket and missile program never too far away, even at this flower exhibition in the center of Pyongyang. Amid the flowers, rockets and missiles, a sign of North Korea's might and power, according to the officials here, taken in by the young visitors.
In fact, the North Korean government has not yet acknowledged that there was either a launch or a failure. One government official did admit to me that these kinds of mistakes can happen. It might not even be the government's fault. There is some speculation that the United States staged a cyber attack against the launch. They reportedly have done so in the past. All indications I get here, though, on the ground, the government is going to keep plugging away. Eric.
All right, Greg, thanks so much. Greg Palcott with a fascinating look inside North Korea from Pyongyang. Arthel?
And Eric, back in this country, reaction pouring in from Capitol Hill on the showdown with North Korea. Senator John McCain, the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, comparing it to a rite of passage for President Trump.
This may be the first test of this presidency, but China can shut them down, and we should be, whether they're currency manipulators or not, we should expect them to act to prevent what could be a cataclysmic event.
All right, let's bring in our panel now. Doug Schoen, a Fox News contributor and a former advisor to President Clinton, and Jay Chabria is a former senator or senior advisor to Ohio Governor John Kasich, now managing director of Mercury LLC. Good to see both of you.
Good to see you, Arthel.
Absolutely. So, Jay, I'm going to start with you. Is this the first test on the Trump presidency, and can the president put his deal-making acumen to use, get China to cooperate and pass the test?
I absolutely think this is the first test. I think Senator McCain's right, and it's also an opportunity, too. Look, the Game of Thrones that we've all witnessed inside the White House seems to be turning, and the foreign policy folks that favored Russia before, now it seems to be favoring a deal with China. That's a good thing for us, both in Syria and also in North Korea, too. I think the Trump presidency, based on the dinner that Trump had with President Xi last week, and also Vice President's trip to South Korea, is a positive thing for us. This is going to be a long, slow dance with China, but they're really the only ones that can put Kim Jong-un in a box. Doug,
how do you see it?
Well, I agree with Jay generally, but first I think we got to say a couple of things. This was a temporary setback today for them, but the North Koreans, but only temporary. They have ICBMs that can be fitted with nuclear weapons that can potentially, and I underscore potentially, hit the west coast of the United States. Yes, it's on the Chinese, but it's also on us. It's on our defense to make it clear that we will do whatever is necessary, ruling out no options to rein in this crazy, chaotic North Korean regime. So far, the president has had some success with his meeting with President Xi, but we have a long way to go. And as both Senator McCain and Jay suggested, the Chinese can do a lot more to help the cause than they have already.
Well, Doug, I'll stay with you for a second.
Please.
Because hasn't President Trump already said what you just said, like all options should remain and will remain on the table?
Well,
in your eyes, will that include military options?
Well, he's ruling nothing out, nor should he. But he said that the Chinese explained to him that it was a little bit more complicated than he had understood. They can turn out the lights in North Korea anytime. 80% of the trade between North Korea and the rest of the world comes from China. I think we have to be really tough on the Chinese to make sure they are really tough on the North Koreans. So, a very good first step.
So, Jay, will it take economic sanctions on China for China to cooperate? And if so, how aggressive will President Trump need to be?
Well, look, it could take economic sanctions. It could take a whole lot of things. Remember, China does not want North Korea to be strong militarily. But the worst thing for them is to have more of U.S. dominance in this North Korean peninsula. That's something they're going to really watch for. So there's going to be a whole lot of things that the Trump administration is going to have to negotiate with the Chinese. It's not going to be quick, and nothing short of regime change is going to show instant gratification. The question I'm going to have is the Trump administration going to be able to see this all the way through? Because it's not going to be easy. It's just going to be slow and prodding, and it's going to take a lot of effort to get this done.
Doug, might there come a day when President Trump sits down with Kim Jong-un and have a face-to-face? I mean, normally that's taboo, but might that be the key? I mean, you know, Kim Jong-un gets the appearance of sitting down with the U.S. president. President Trump gets the opportunity to intimidate Kim Jong-un in person. Is that too far-fetched?
Well, the North Koreans will have to renounce once and for all the development and use of nuclear weapons. They're a long way away from that, but if by some chance the Chinese or the pressure from South Korea were such that they did that, I wouldn't rule it out. But at this point, that's a long, long way away if it were to ever happen.
Hey, Jay, I want to go back to something you just said. You just said that, you know, everyone should be patient because whatever is going to happen here with China, putting pressure on China, for China to put pressure on North Korea, that it's going to take some time. You know, some people have, you know, I'd say condemned the former presidency and his administration of taking too much time. So why are you saying that now?
Well, I think unless you're going to actually go in and try to change the regime, it is going to take time. Remember, what North Korea wants, they want missiles that are based on solid fuel technology rather than liquid fuel technology. That takes years and years and years. And yesterday's failure, Doug is absolutely right. It is not necessarily a failure. You learn a lot from failures. Ask Tesla, ask the Wright brothers, ask the Russians who took 10, 15 years to develop solid fuel missiles. That's what I'm trying to say. Unless you're ready to go in with boots on the ground and try to start to do a regime change, that's the only way this thing takes that you can actually see something happening. So everything short of that is not instant gratification.
Doug, you know, certainly no one's looking for instant gratification per se, but what about those warnings that, you know, in a few short years, Kim Jong-un will have missiles, nuclear missiles, warheads included, that can get to us?
Well, that's the great fear, and Jay is right to say we're not going to have a quick fix to this. But on the other hand, if we get to the point where they credibly have a nuclear threat against us, the possibility of unilateral action by us has to be on the table. Nobody wants it. It would lead to tens of thousands of casualties in South Korea and in North Korea. We don't want it, but nobody's ruling it out. And if the North Koreans do not, for whatever reason, shut down their program or vow not to use or develop nuclear weapons, then it remains an active option that sadly, and very sadly, has to be considered.
I've got 30 seconds. Jay, I'm going to give you the last word. I did start with you, but I'm going to stick with you. Congress. How is Congress going to react when the president has to go and face them? Quickly, please.
Look, I think Congress usually punts in situations like this. I think they'll continue to do that. I think that's the easy out for them, and they usually try to read the tea leaves and go that way. That's just the cynicism in me speaking out here.
Jay is sadly right, Arthel. We can agree on Easter Sunday on that. The president's shown leadership.
We'll leave it there. Doug Schoen and Jay Chabria, thank you so much. Happy Easter and happy Passover. Thank you.
Oh, tens of thousands of Christians flocking to St. Peter's Square today to hear